Hello, welcome to another live episode of The Cole Memo. It's Friday, February 14th. It's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. We've got a few different shows to cover. We've got a few different topics to cover today. If you're watching this after the fact, we are live. If you'd like to tune into future live streams, just subscribe on YouTube and you should be notified. In most cases, today was an impromptu live. Didn't plan to go live today, but cheers. Oh, and yes, I've got my Reefer Madness era coffee cup here. And yes, I'm drinking coffee at 5:05 p.m., which is the time that we're starting this live podcast. Looks like we got our first comment in for today. There's a glitch in the live. That's what somebody says. There's a glitch in the live. What do you mean by that? That doesn't sound good. Maybe a side effect to doing a live stream unplanned. Who knows? Please comment below and tell me what you mean, because I hope there's nothing too serious going on. We're going to... It keeps replaying your last 10 seconds. Well, that's fucking weird. Well, in that case, like it's playing my last 10 seconds of audio over and over again. This is what you get when you do things live, right? Fuck it, we'll do it live. Is anybody else noticing this? Please comment below. I don't want to get too far into the episode here. Maybe it's only 3 seconds. I'm just curious what you mean. Is it like echoing my audio? I want to make sure that I can get this figured out. Doesn't sound good, that's for sure. And I apologize if you're tuning into this after the fact and you're just like, get into the show. The entire slip, audio and video. We're going to take a brief break to try and check this out. I'll be right back after this message.
Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini-doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st, what should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Okay, we're going to do a little bit of a check here. Is anybody else experiencing this issue? I'm getting a comment that's saying there's a glitch in the live. Can everybody hear me okay? Please drop a comment below. They're saying even the commercial did it. This is a new one for me. We haven't done these lives for very long. So please comment below. Oh, Cannabis Critique is saying it's working fine for me. Thank you for confirming that. I appreciate that. Ingrid, can you maybe try to like relaunch your video or something? I'm wondering if this is perhaps on your end, if you're using like Bluetooth or anything else like that. Yeah, I'm getting other comments on other platforms, people saying that they're hearing me fine. So I'm gonna assume maybe this is only on your end, Ingrid. That's super weird. I will just say that. Oh, they say it's good now. Well, hey, let's move on then. Okay, so I've got an action-packed show for today. We're gonna be talking about RFK Jr.'s recent comments on cannabis. We're gonna be talking about some new bills that have been filed. And you know what? Why don't we just get right into it, shall we? So I'm going to talk about a cannabis consumption bill that was introduced. Let's read from our friends at Illinois News Joint. Let's take a look at this. So, Illinois bills would create an on-premise cannabis consumption act. Once again, we're live, folks, so as you're watching, if you want, drop your comments below. I'll display it. You can also call into the show now, live, by going to colememo.com/live. We're taking callers, as they say on talk radio. You don't have to show your video. You can call in audio only. Just throwing it out there. Drop your comments below, call in live. A few different ways to participate in the show. Once again, this show comes from Illinois News Joint. If you want to check out Illinois News Joint, go to illinoisnewsjoint.com. In this article, they're covering, it looks like, two different bills. House Bill 3513, introduced by Representative Justin Slaughter, and Senate Bill 1772, introduced by Senator Kimberly A. Lightford. Looks like maybe there's also a third bill. Am I reading this wrong? House Bill 3061, introduced by Representative Sonia Harper. Oh, which contains identical wording for the creation of the On-Premise Cannabis Consumption Act. So, if I'm understanding this correctly, and I need to have some of the folks on that helped write this language, this Senate Bill, Senate Bill 1772 and House Bill 3061, have identical wording so that they can get it passed out of the Senate and the House and send it right to the governor. I would say that that's probably the reason they did this. So the On-Premise Cannabis Consumption Act provides that a county or municipality may issue licenses for temporary events and cannabis hospitality venues that will allow for the consumption of cannabis or cannabis-infused products and for the sale of cannabis paraphernalia at such temporary events or venues. The act defines cannabis hospitality venue as a public or private restaurant, bar, or other licensed business that allows communal consumption of cannabis or cannabis-infused products on premises. What do you guys think about this? I think this sounds pretty cool. You would be able to, if this act defines a cannabis hospitality venue as a public or private restaurant, bar, or other licensed business that allows communal consumption of cannabis or cannabis-infused products on premises, that sounds pretty lit. And this is where it gets super cool. Notwithstanding any other provision of this act, smoking is allowed in the following areas: private residences or dwelling places, a licensed dispensary, hotel and motel sleeping rooms that are rented to guests and are designated as smoking rooms. Hotel and motel establishments may also apply and be licensed under the provisions of the act and may host consumption events as detailed in that act. You can also open up or allow consumption if you're a retail tobacco store, an enclosed laboratory that are excluded from the definition of place of employment, common smoking rooms and long-term care facilities, a convention hall of the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center. Interesting that it's very specific in that. I'd have to read the bill. And temporary events or cannabis hospitality venues licensed under the act. An applicant for a temporary event permit under this section must apply for the permit in the manner required by ordinance of the governmental unit. Permit fees assessed under this section must be reasonably related to the cost of inspecting and regulating the temporary event, and a little bit more. If you want to read more about this, I'll have this link in the show notes. I'm curious, what do you think? We got some comments coming in. Cannabis Critique says, ooh, this would be huge. I'd love to be able to host an event at a bar or a restaurant. Hey, I'm right there with you. This would be really, really cool. An awesome step in the right direction. I want to share my screen. I believe that the folks at ICA, the Illinois Cannabis Consumption Association, I believe that's what ICA stands for. I'm about to share my screen. Let's stop that screen share. Let's share this screen. They made this post about the bill, or about the act. They say it's an Illinois bill to legalize cannabis hospitality venues and events. Once upon a time, Illinois legalized cannabis sales, but almost nowhere to consume it. I'm curious what everybody thinks about this so far. Feel free to drop your comments. I'll display them on screen, or you can call in at colememo.com/live. It looks like you can read more about this at consumptionact.com. Let's check that out. Oh yeah, cool. Check it out. They've got a whole thing, even a button so that you can email or call your legislator. Look at that. Look at that. Curious what you all think. Be sure to comment below, and if you haven't already, smash that like button and subscribe so that you can be notified when we go live again in the future. A lot of good information at consumptionact.com. Super interesting stuff. Curious what you all think. I think the only thought that I have on this, and it's pretty simple. I wish that we could just smoke cannabis where you can smoke cigarettes. So I know that this bill makes some exemptions to the Smoke-Free Illinois Act, which seems pretty cool, especially if it would allow you to consume in a restaurant or any of those other places. There's plenty of other places. I just think it'd be cool if, like, you know, I could just walk out on the sidewalk and smoke. Now, with that said, it really is up to the municipality or locality. I'd have to try to find the language that a lawyer gave me in the past, but the long story short of what I remember is that the Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, which everybody knows, or most people refer to rather, as the bill that legalized cannabis, does say that you're not allowed to smoke in public, but it doesn't spell out a punishment for that, from what I understand. So certain cities are able to ticket, and if a city had a mechanism like that set up in the past, like when cannabis was decriminalized between 2016 and 2020, you know, you can give somebody a ticket for that. And actually, I spoke to a Chicago police officer, and they do have a ticket for that. It's like a public intoxication ticket. There's something similar to that. Like I say, with all that said, though, the city of Chicago, at least in the past, made it clear, I believe it was under Mayor Lori Lightfoot, that residents can smoke on their porch or deck in the public, and CPD resources would not be used to stop that. So, you know, there's that. It's a weird, like, gray area. So I would just say that that's my only thoughts. I'm really excited though about this legislation. I just got some comments in. Let's see what the people are saying. Cannabis Critique said, "That'd make too much sense. That's how Canada handles cannabis. So much simpler." Are you just saying that, like, you can just smoke wherever you can smoke a cigarette? And yeah, I do the same. They just commented, I just pretend that's how it works anyway. So somebody on Instagram commented, "I really hope they don't stall this for years now. It is a very well explained setup. There is strength in numbers with this." Yeah, I have to agree, you know. I hope this sees the light of day. I hope this gets the attention that it deserves. And yeah, please let me know if you have any other thoughts. Drop your comments below. Call into the show at colememo.com/live. You don't have to turn your video on. I always like to mention that in case the idea of having your face on screen makes you nervous. Let's move on to the next subject, which, speaking of cannabis bills that have been filed, let's see if I can get this shown. Yeah, here we go. So the Cannabis Equity Coalition of Illinois recently shared their priorities for the 104th General Assembly. I'm displaying it on my screen right now. at least a graphic that they published. It looks like they are backing the social consumption lounge bill that I just was sharing. So this is on their list of priorities. They'd like to see this become law. They say it will make it easier for cities to license cannabis lounges and temporary consumption events. It'll establish ventilation and security standards to make regulation easier. And of course, with cannabis use still being criminalized, or at least penalized, you can get a penalty for it, a ticket of some sort, depending on where you are. Lounges provide harm reduction and new business opportunities. This is a bill that we've discussed in the past. If you'd like to learn more about it, I'll tell you how you can in just a moment. Senate Bill 42 and House Bill 2585 by Senator Ventura and Representative Tarver would make it so that law enforcement cannot stop or search you just because they smell cannabis. More specifically, it eliminates the odor-proof container requirement from Illinois law, which would obviously be a huge win for Illinois consumers. And I don't mean to say obviously, in case you didn't know, just to be short about this, because I've talked about it so many times in the past, there is no such thing as an odor-proof container. And to prove that, I will challenge you to go to an Illinois cannabis dispensary. You will smell cannabis if you have a sense of smell. You will be able to smell cannabis, and none of the cannabis is packaged there. It comes there pre-packaged. So it's not like when I first started going to dispensaries back in the medical days, I always wondered, like, are they packing it in the back? No, it all comes pre-packed. It's part of Illinois regulations. And so what that tells you is that the containers themselves that they sell them in are not odor-proof, meaning, and I've talked to some lawyers about this on the show in the past, meaning that the moment that you purchase, walk out, and get in your car and get on the roadway, you are out of compliance with the law, and you could be charged with a Class A misdemeanor. They can use it to violate your Fourth Amendment right. In other words, they can search your car based off the smell of cannabis. Now, what's super fucked up about this that I'll just say before I move on is that, some of you might just say, well, like, put it in another container or something like that. The point is, and this is just the issue with drugs in general, it's all up to a cop's discretion. And if a cop says they smell cannabis when they see you pull out of a dispensary, or just happen to see perhaps that you're a medical card holder, because they can still do it. It doesn't show up on your driver's license or your, there used to be a notation that the Secretary of State put on your driver's license, and cops could literally see when they scanned your license plate. From what I understand, cops still have access to the medical cannabis database. So, like, hypothetically, and I'm sure some of them do this, they take their sweet time while they're back there looking up all your information. They could look up, see you're a medical cannabis patient, and just be like, I think I smell cannabis in here. And, they could maybe say that with some certainty because they can see you're a medical cannabis patient. And the point I'm trying to make is, unlike any other crime, like, I can't just easily accuse somebody of murder or shooting something or breaking something. Like, if I wanted to, like, set up a, what's that called? What is that called? A fall guy, for lack of better words. If I wanted to set somebody up, the easiest way to do that is with drugs. And that's like the whole problem with the drug war. You can say you smelled something. How are you going to prove that in court? You're going to bring their car in and let the jury smell? No. You can say you found a dime bag on him. How are you going to prove that? Well, you can just literally plant a dime bag on somebody and then be like, hey, I found it on him. No questions asked. They're going to jail. Versus other crimes, which, like I say, are provable. So, anyways, moving on from this, obviously we need to get that resolved. Curious what you all think about this bill. I mean, I think it's ridiculous that... Now, I guess I should say this before I move on. This would make it so that cannabis odor alone would not allow them to search your vehicle. If you're fucking speeding down I-57... weaving in and out of lanes, let's just keep it at speeding. If you've broken one law and they smell cannabis when they pull you over, they can still search your vehicle, from what I understand. The issue or the solution that this bill would offer is that it would no longer be a Class A misdemeanor if they simply found cannabis in your car. Because that's the crime that was created with this odor-proof language. So that would remove that as a crime, and you would able to legally be able to transport cannabis, and smell alone would not be a reason that you could be searched or detained. So, curious what people think about that. Please drop your comments below. Once again, we're live. I can display them on screen. And you can always call in at colememo.com/live. Moving on. This is an interesting one, especially when you consider the ruling that just happened in the Illinois Supreme Court. The state stopped a stash bag program they had. And I'll have Peter from the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition on the show in the future, but you may have seen these at your dispensary. They're blue bags. I think they're from the Department of HHS or something, and maybe it says it here. No, it doesn't say it, but some agency or department in the state of Illinois had funding and actually created stash bags, which are, they've got a little lock on them. They're supposedly odor-proof. And the idea was that if you buy cannabis from a dispensary and put your products in that bag and make sure they're locked and out of reach, that this is a way that you can better comply with this silly law that we were just talking about with the odor-proof cannabis. Apparently, the state just stopped making these. Awful timing, by the way, considering that the Illinois Supreme Court just ruled that the state can still search your car if they smell raw cannabis. So when this ruling comes out, and it's just a coincidence, I'm sure. I'm not alleging any wrongdoing here, purposeful negligence. I'm not saying anything like that. It's just like really awful timing that the state of Illinois has stopped making these stash bags, which apparently have worked for people in avoiding trouble, and now they will no longer be offering them. So, curious what you think about these priorities from the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition. Moving on, we'll talk about a hemp bill that was just introduced. Not a lot of discussion here, but wanted to share it. Senate Bill 1775. 1775, the year before America came to be. Just joking. So Senate Bill 1775 would amend the Illinois Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and basically provide that a product shall not be considered adulterated just because it contains hemp-derived cannabinoids, including but not limited to Delta-9 THC, Delta-8 THC, THCA, or any hemp product, provided that the hemp used in the product complies with the definition of hemp as specified in federal law. Just before we get too far, Ingrid says, I have 2 of those stash bags. I think I have one too. Let me see if I can find it really quick. All right, we're live, so I'll show you here. Here's the stash bag. You can see I've never opened it. And it looks like this is funded in whole or in part by IDHS/SUPR, whatever that means. I'm reading that on the back there. You can see this bag, which I got from the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition, has a little lock right here. And it's nothing fancy, but it, shows that you're trying to, not be a troublemaker, I guess. I don't know. It shows you're putting in effort into transporting your cannabis and trying to stay out of trouble, trying to prove, you've got it locked up, bro. I was not using it, right? So, interesting stuff. Ingrid says she has 2. I've got 1. Anyways, back to Senate Bill 1775. Yeah, this seems to be, or actually, I shouldn't say seems to be, this is the same language from House Bill 64, so similar to the proposal I talked about earlier with consumption. The idea behind, submitting, from what I understand, the idea behind submitting language that is similar in both the House and the Senate is that if it passes the House and passes the Senate, it'll go right to Governor Pritzker for his signature. So this was a bill submitted by Senator Preston, not me, Senator Willie Preston, different Senator Preston. I'm also not a senator, so I shouldn't say different Senator Preston. Anyways, though, notably, I think it's notable to mention that Senator Preston was one of the only people, or was the only person in the Senate to vote against the hemp ban during the last legislative session. So not only is he the one person in the Senate to vote against the hemp ban, but he has now proposed an alternative in the Senate. Speaking of hemp growers, I'll share this link if you guys want to check this out. This is almost a month old now. I meant to share this sooner than now, but Illinois Public Media held an interview between several people in the cannabis and hemp industry, and the headline is, "Should hemp growers have to abide by the same regulations as cannabis producers?" On the show is Tiffany Ingram, the executive director of the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois. They represent some of the largest cannabis businesses in the state of Illinois. Chris Berry from the Illinois Hemp Growers Association. Caleb Howard, who's the executive director of the Illinois Black Hemp Association. I meant to mention that Chris Berry is the chief operating officer for the Illinois Hemp Growers Association. And Scott Redmond, the founder and president of the Illinois Independent Craft Growers Association. 3 of the 4 of those people have been on the show in the past if you want to check it out. Pretty good interview. I say pretty good because I just wish it was longer, honestly, but maybe I've grown used to my podcast. Curious what you think about these hemp proposals or anything we've covered so far. Please drop your comments below. We can display them on screen and I'll discuss them. You can also call into the show at colememo.com/live. We're about to move into the main story of the day, which is RFK Jr.'s comments on cannabis. But before we do that, 2 other stories. This one from Capital News, Illinois. This is an interesting one. I won't go too long into this because it gets a little muddy, but Pritzker must address the multi-billion-dollar deficit amid federal funding uncertainty. So, in case you didn't know, the governor's annual budget address is coming up, and Capital News Illinois says it will be among the toughest in the governor's 2 terms. Governor J.B. Pritzker will present his 7th budget proposal Wednesday as the state faces a projected $3.2 billion revenue shortfall for fiscal year 2026, which begins July 1st. Federal pandemic aid has all been allocated and the economy has slowed, leaving tax revenue projections relatively flat for the coming years. On top of these changes to the fiscal wind pattern in Illinois, states now face more uncertainty about the future of federal funding that makes up a sizable portion of state budgets and vital state programs. President Donald Trump's desire to significantly scale back federal funding in general leaves states like Illinois wondering just how much money will be available to cover long-standing programs. I will just say that, there's a lot of uncertainty right now with regard to this. I've seen, for example, even a great university like the University of Illinois has had to shut down some of their leading research labs, which really sucks. Really does suck. Got a comment in. Cannabis Critique said, IDK, Rauner just never passed one a few years ago. Yeah, no, well said. And I will just say, similarly to what I just said, as a result of that, colleges and schools were really put in a squeeze because there was no state budget, no money allocated towards schools. And so I don't know. I wonder if this, I hope not, but this could spell really bad news if the state doesn't have funding and if the feds aren't going to be funding. I think like the thing that I mentioned about the University of Illinois just a moment ago, I think it has to do with a soy lab and USAID or USAID. I don't know how you say that. Let's see here. USAID, University of Illinois, soy. Yeah. So I just Googled this. The U of I soybeans pending closure due to U.S. aid cuts. Which from what I understand, this is just not good. Like this is a really important lab. I don't know what they do here. Oh, it looks like they address global hunger and food security. Seems like a pretty fucking big deal. Somebody just commented in Cannabis Critique, which if I haven't mentioned already, Cannabis Critique is a really good cannabis content creator in the state of Illinois. Specifically, I know they review cannabis, so be sure to check them out. They commented and said, with the federal shit show, nobody knows what's going to happen. Pepper your Angus, I'd say. Yeah, crazy stuff. Well, why don't we we've got one more story today, and this one's sort of a sad one, so I don't know that I'll cover it for too long, but we're about to transition to our main story of the day. But anyways, a teen was accused of being under the influence of cannabis in a wreck that killed a Chillicothe girl. So from Chillicothe, Illinois. According to the article, the 15-year-old was operating a vehicle that was involved in a crash that killed a 14-year-old, and they were allegedly under the influence of cannabis when the wreck occurred, according to the Marshall County State's attorney. The juvenile driver, who does not possess a driver's license, has been charged with reckless homicide, aggravated reckless driving, and aggravated DUI in connection to the death. According to information provided to the Journal Star by the Marshall County State's Attorney Patrick Murphy, the driver's name has not been released because they are a minor. Yeah. Interesting stuff. I just wonder how they are sure they were under the influence of cannabis at the time. Like if there was cannabis in the car. I don't know. I'm just always... I guess what I will say is that, you hear reports out of Colorado, especially from people that are opposed to cannabis, and they'll say, well, Colorado legalized it and the rates of under the influence driving went up. And I'm like, how do you determine that? Especially in the case of Colorado, where after they legalized, there was this a bunch of people moving into Colorado. So there were more people. So I don't know if that stat accounts for the shift in population. There are more people. And also, yes, some of them may have consumed cannabis in the last month. And that's where I really get confused and always curious on stories like these. Like, was there a blunt on the floorboard? Was the car filled with smoke? Or did they urine test this person, in this case, this kid, and determine he had THC, or they? I don't mean to say he. I don't know. They didn't release a name. But I just wonder how they determine that. So, just a thought. We'll move on to our main story of the day, which has to do with RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'll just say before we share this post, before we watch this video, from what I can tell, many people that invest in cannabis have been viewing RFK as some sort of silver bullet. We're going to get rescheduling. We're going to have descheduling because he has this tear down the system viewpoint. And so, I mean, look, I don't follow RFK much at all. I do recall that he has made statements, I believe, about descheduling cannabis in the past, which I am generally supportive of. But let's watch his latest comments, which definitely have spurred some reactions, which we will watch today. And I'm curious what you think. Please drop your comments below or call into the show live. Call into the show now. You just got to go to colememo.com/live. You don't have to turn your video on. You can just call in audio. I'm curious what you think. Before I play this video, I'll also just say that he's going on the Ingram angle, which features, the host is Laura Ingram. And in case you didn't know, we've talked about it on the show in the past, but Laura Ingram has a history of whenever there's like a mass shooting in America, she has like made the correlation that cannabis is behind the preponderance of shootings in America. So just a little background on the host of this show before we watch this video. Let's watch the video.
Senator Pete Ricketts said that you'd follow the science.
Also, before I go too much farther, Senator Pete Ricketts famously said something to the effect, let's see here, I'm Googling it right now. Senator Ricketts, kill children, marijuana. Yes, he said something like that. Oh, he said legal marijuana will kill your kids. So just a little bit of background on Senator Ricketts before we watch this video. Here we go.
Senator Pete Ricketts said that you'd follow the science on marijuana's harms, which are increasingly documented. There have been 2 recent studies saying that pot causes psychosis, one from Canada, one even covered by the New York Times, multiple pieces actually in the Times. It increases the chances of death. Are you concerned about the normalization of high THC marijuana, especially among our young people, and what might you do about it?
Yeah, I am worried about it. And, you know, I've been in recovery for 42 years. I go to 12-step meetings, Laura, every day. And so I hear stories all the time of people, of the impacts of marijuana on people and really catastrophic impacts on them. That worry also has to be balanced about, you know, the impacts that we had before. The 25 states now have legalized marijuana. But we had about 1/3 of our prison population that was in jail because of marijuana offenses. That's something we don't want either. We have, because of the legalization of recreational marijuana in 25 states, we have now a capacity to really study it and to compare it to states.
Studies look bad.
Right, and we need to do studies. We need to figure out, and then we need to implement policies to address.
Anti-abortion.
All right. So I was just looking up marijuana shooting because somebody just commented, what the fuck? How does that connect? Tree to gun emoji. Yeah, let me see if I can't find a short video here. It's not looking like I am able to, but check it out. There's plenty of longer videos, so I'll just show you really quick. I'm not making this up. Ingram, weed causes shootings. What do all of these shooters have in common? Apparently they smoke weed and went on a mass rampage. Yeah, that's the show he went on. So I'm curious, what do you think about RFK's comments on cannabis? Do they matter? I mean, at this point, I think the rescheduling process, if that's what you care about, is in the hands of the DEA. I believe RFK is over HHS, which actually did initiate the rescheduling process. I think if he were going to say anything, and I may have gotten this point from the video I'm about to watch, he should have said, you know, I don't know about these studies that you're referencing, but the department that I am now heading submitted a 200-page review. They did their own studies and found that we should move forward with rescheduling. I think that would have been a better reply, but, you know, curious what you all think. Drop that comment below. Feel free to join the show, colememo.com/live. Let's see how other people are reacting to these statements.
Around some of the comments last night, and we're kind of just getting started.
Yes, we are. Before we bring in Eric, I do want to highlight real quick, just what'd you make of that news last night where RFK was on Laura Ingram? Some of the news that he brought up, the topic was of cannabis was brought up, and this is something that Fox keeps bringing up more and more, where he voiced his concerns about the, quote, catastrophic impacts of marijuana, but he also outlined that he is calling for more research, which is key. So what's your first initial interpretation of it all?
So looking at it objectively, when I was watching the segment, I thought the rhetoric was jarring, to say the least. I thought that his tune had changed someone that had openly said that he wanted to deschedule or legalize cannabis on the campaign trail when he was the presidential candidate. That tune at face value was much different last night. However, the arena that he was speaking in was much different. Laura Ingraham is a prohibitionist. She's an absolute anti-marijuana proponent. I don't think she's interested in even looking at, let's say, the HHS report or any of the science that actually is provided to the benefits of cannabis. But I also think that RFK and the rhetoric that he was using wasn't wrong. When you talk about high dose THC products, dabs, concentrates, those do elicit different responses than, let's say, flower, vapes, edibles, or other products. There are hemp products out there that people need to recognize are very, very high dosage products that aren't Delta 9 derived, that are THCP, HHC, high dosage edibles and beverages that can elicit those responses. And unfortunately, right now, those products are grouped in with cannabis. Did he also recognize that we do need to decriminalize, that we do need to get people out of jail, and a third of the prison population, to some extent, are cannabis-related offenses? He did a good job at talking about both sides of the coin. He also came at it from a certain lens that he's a recovering addict. He currently does the 12-step meetings, I think, on a daily basis. His body language to me too was also uncomfortable addressing the issue. I don't know if he was going to talk about it or plan to talk about it in the same light that came through on the show. Was it a different tune than he's been saying in the past? Yes. Do I think that it's net negative? No. He alluded to there are legal markets in the United States. There's a need for further research. There's a need to further look into the science around the plant.
Agreed.
And we are going to research it. If you want to look at that objectively, that would imply that we need to reschedule it to ensure more research on the federal level. But I can understand the naysayers out there that are saying, well, he changed his tune. Well, this was a surprise. Yes, it was a change of tune and it was a surprise. Do I think that it affects our ultimate goal of rescheduling? No, I've been pretty adamant the fact that RFK doesn't really have any sort of relevance to further the rescheduling initiative. The judge, jury, and executioner is Donald J. Trump. If he wants to get it done, he's going to get it done. If RFK is then mandated to do further research as it relates to cannabis under the lens of Schedule 3 and then objectively come to conclusions, does it cause things such as schizophrenia? Is it addictive? Is there an accepted medical use? And use the tools that he has at hand to further cannabis regulations, we'll come to that in the future.
Mark Landers writes, I think.
So, curious what you think. We got some comments in. Please drop your comments below. If you haven't already, smash that like button and hit subscribe. That'll ensure that you're notified next time we go live. Been trying to do more of these. We got some comments in while we were watching that video. Deschedule and home grow with great seeds. I actually have one last story that I almost just forgot until you said that. Please, if I almost close the store without, if I almost close this show without mentioning seeds, Jim Marks, be sure to drop another comment. I don't think I'll forget, but Rachel Berry commented, if his position is we need to do studies, that's a good thing overall, as studies will show cannabis is essentially harmless. Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that they sort of mentioned that as well. You know, on one hand, he seemed to acknowledge the catastrophic effects. I think that was his words. He also mentioned that it was kind of weird to bring up that he was in recovery in the context of this, in my opinion. But he said that's where he's heard some of these stories about cannabis. But like you say, not only did he say we need to study it more, but he also acknowledged that the approach where we throw people in jail for a non-violent offense, I think he said, is not something that we want either. So, yeah, definitely, you know, a hard comment to try and understand. I'm glad that there's some more conversation happening because people are still wondering what the Trump administration will do with cannabis, if anything. Just in case you didn't know, Trump has tweeted or truth socialed in the past, whatever you want to say, about cannabis. He signaled support for rescheduling. He has said, that cannabis needs to be researched more. So I don't see rescheduling being slowed down at all in the Trump administration. I also don't see it being sped up at all. I don't know, though. I'm speculating. Let me know what you think. I'm curious what everybody thinks. Somebody asked, was he under the influence when taking questions? I don't know. Only he can answer that question. Everything else I would say would be speculation. Somebody else commented and said, I'm in the Illinois cannabis industry and I'm nervous. My hope is they lean into the medical market with more support and do a little restructure to the recreational market. I'm curious what you mean by that and why you say that. Are you saying that in the context of this rescheduling stuff that we're talking about with RFK Jr., or is there something else on your mind? I'm curious what you mean by that. So, all right, well, that was a pretty good little watch. Why don't we check out the other story that I mentioned, which has to do with seeds. I really wish I actually would have covered this a little bit sooner. This is an awesome story. This won't be the last time I cover it or mention it because this is just such a powerful story. It's easy to forget this. How European cannabis seed companies are quietly taking over the U.S. market. The cannabis industry owes much of its foundation to one simple but often overlooked component, the seed. While modern commercial cultivation frequently relies on cloning and tissue culture to maintain genetic consistency, seeds remain essential for biodiversity and the expansion of cannabis genetics. Despite being the cornerstone of cannabis cultivation, seeds have long taken a back seat in the broader U.S. market, overshadowed by products with mass appeal like flower, edibles, and concentrates. Yet, a significant shift is underway. European seed companies are capitalizing on the rising trend of home cultivation, redefining their role as a key driver of the industry's growth. Now, I'm not going to talk about home cultivation. That might surprise some of you because I talk about home cultivation a lot. What I want to talk about is the fact that, if it were just a few years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, or less, oftentimes, the idea, if you were to ask a cannabis cultivator where they got their genetics, do you know what the answer is? I'm curious. I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to do the Blues Clues thing and see if anybody can comment. The way they would answer you if you asked, hey, where'd you get these seeds? Where'd you get these clones? They'd say immaculate conception. But thanks to hemp, they no longer have to do that. Seeds, according to the DEA, and I can Google this. Why don't we Google this? DEA says cannabis seeds are hemp. Yeah. DEA confirms that cannabis seeds, tissue culture, and is it cuttings? Tissue cultures and genetic materials, which I think would include cuttings, are hemp. So this is really funny when you consider that you need seeds, you need clones, you need tissue culture in order to start a grow. And for the longest time, the answer to how did you get these seeds was just look the other way. That's what I meant by immaculate conception. If you're familiar with that term, I think it's a biblical term. It's the idea that you just got it, don't ask questions. I think this is funny because if you consider that this is the foundation of legal cannabis, the foundation of legal cannabis is hemp. Of course, because hemp is cannabis. I guess I should say legal marijuana, right? Because that is in case you didn't know, in case you haven't been watching this show, you've got marijuana, you've got hemp, These are arbitrary legal terms. And then you've got cannabis, which is a botanical term. In other words, it's a term that's actually based in science. So, just a interesting story and an interesting thought I wanted to end on. I'm curious what you all think. Someone said the Big Bang Theory of cannabis origin. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, it's it's about 6 o'clock on a Friday. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all staying warm. It has been a cold one here in Illinois. Hope you're all taking care of yourselves. Let's see. Did I have any other stories today? I don't. So, if you have any other comments, be sure to drop them. Somebody just said, in my opinion, high THC products should be regulated more in both areas. More broad cannabinoids need research. I will just say that, like, the whole foundation of kind of cannabis, well, how should I say this? People have been saying cannabis doesn't have research or science behind it for a long time. And the whole problem has been that the federal law prevents research. And I guess what I'm saying is the lack of research has never stopped us from consuming or allowing the sale of cannabis. I don't disagree with you that they should be studied more, and I'm sure we'll learn more. This whole focus on high THC products, I think, is a little misdirected. Again, I study them, whatever. Figure it out. But the context in which they were talking about it, it's very, it feels like it gives the impression, it just instills a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I personally think we've been consuming high potency products for a long time. Edibles are an example. You can look back through history. People have been consuming edibles that aren't measured in dosage. And edibles are just, they affect your body different. The way that it's processed, it is more potent than THC. It's like 11-hydroxy. I don't know. I can't remember what it is, but it converts in your body. And that's why a lot of people say edibles, the edible high is like a different high. Not only that, but you've got hash, which has been used for a long time. And that's high potency marijuana, right? I just think that the fear and the uncertainty and the doubt around high potency products are misdirected when you consider that I can go to the store and buy Everclear, and if I drank the whole bottle, I would likely die. I don't think that's any reason for a drug to be illegal just because you can die from it. I'm just saying, like, it just feels misdirected. I'm curious what people think. I have to agree with the comment that just came in. Somebody said research is great. Let's grow. At the end of the day, yeah, I think more research is better and good and fine. But it's also important to I don't mean to say question the research, but look into the research, because you'd be surprised. Some researchers or people that fund the research go in with their own agendas. I mean, we're all human, right? So it's always important to look into that stuff, refamiliarize yourself with like statistics 101, figure out if their sample sizes and if they've got a control, what's the control group look like. I'm just saying a lot of different words and concepts that you should look into if you're not familiar already. There's probably more. There's a whole, I'm sure, analysis of studies as a whole. It's probably a field in and of itself. I know a lot of different people that are much better than I am at kind of parsing data and studies and telling me, like, you know, what's what. A good example I can give you before I go And please drop your comments if you have any thoughts, or feel free to call into the show. We're just about to wrap, so if you want to call in, colememo.com/live. You don't have to go on video. You can call in. Within the last year, people in the marijuana industry, the legal marijuana industry in Illinois, have said, oh, all these high schoolers are consuming Delta 8 and hemp products. But if you looked at that study, and we did on the show in the past, I can't tell you what episode off the top of my head, but we pulled up the study, we looked at it, and one of the figures that they excluded, that they conveniently did not include, was that the number of high schoolers that tried marijuana was higher than the number of high schoolers that had tried hemp. Conveniently left out. And this is an example of where it's like, okay, somebody cites a study and it sounds real official when you say, well, according to these studies. All I'm saying is, folks, whenever you hear that, try to look into the study yourself. Try to crunch the numbers yourself. Rachel Berry just commented and said, science can be bought and sold. Unfortunately, just like everything else, it seems like in our country. Well, folks, it's Friday. Cheers. I hope you're doing well. On Monday, I'll be in Princeton, Illinois. By the way, smoking on some Sun-Drenched Farm, which is a local farm here in Illinois. They've got THCA flower. Amazing stuff. Excuse me while I cough. Amazing stuff. Check them out if you want to support a local Illinois farm. Speaking of local Illinois farms, on Monday, I'll be speaking with the Illinois Hemp Growers Association. Let me see if I can pull this up really quick in case you can make it. Let's check this out, shall we? I will share my screen. Give this a little look-see before we go. Yeah. Illinois HGA, which is their handle on social media. Let's see here. Where is it? Okay, yeah. I'll be telling my story on Monday, which is going to be the 17th. I'm trying to look. The open office hours are from 1 to 4. If you just want to like come and talk and ask questions before the actual workshop starts, which is at 4 to 7. There are snacks provided. You can tune in remotely from what I understand. Yeah, they say, furthermore, due to popular demand, the workshop will be available virtually too. So, you know, if you can't make it, it looks like you can RSVP. I'm on their social media right now, but there's a link to RSVP. It looks like if you just go to illinoishga.com, you'll probably see some details. I'll try going there in just a second, but I'll be speaking about how I started creating content, why I created content, and just kind of telling my story. From what I understand, Madeline Scanlon will be there as well from High Focus Media. She's also from ICA. We were talking about the Consumption Act earlier. I believe she, a person named Depeche, and Nathan, and maybe others are part of ICA, and they helped to draft up that consumption bill. She'll be there telling her story as well, how she got into content creation. And so, yeah, if you can make it, come on out. Someone said maybe I should say THCA isolates instead of high THC products. Full spectrum for the win. Happy Friday. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you. My heart. You took my heart. Yeah, I guess before I go, I will just confirm really quick that if you go to Illinois HGA, I will display my screen again. I like to just show people sometimes how to find this stuff. Yeah, so if you're on Illinois HGA and you just scroll down, at least at the time of this live stream / recording, you can see the Storytelling and Advocacy 101. You can learn more on RSVP. You need to RSVP. in order to attend. Even if you're attending online, you need to RSVP. So make sure you do that, and we'll see you there. Take care, everybody.
Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st, what should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
The program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois.
Yeah.
And I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc.